One. You're on, Chair.
Thank you. I declare this meeting open. Good evening and welcome to this Central Area Planning Committee on Wednesday, the 5th of July 2023. My name is Councillor John Driver and I am the chair of this committee. Members, we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Could I ask members to avoid approaching the top table, as this could create interference with the cameras and live stream. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of the microphones. Therefore, can I ask you that when invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and turn it off again when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. On to item 2 then. Actually, I believe that we've had no notes regarding, or further notes regarding this meeting. So, Committee Clerk, could I have apologies for absence, please?
Good evening, Chair. We have apologies for absence from Councillor Miller, and that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So on to agenda item 3 then, minutes. It is recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of April 2023, found on pages 7 to 10, are approved as a true and accurate record. And as I wasn't at that meeting, is somebody going to propose? Councillor Lagan, thank you. And second? Thank you, Councillor Shaughnessy. Can I have approval by assent?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. On to declarations of interest. Item 4, to disclose the existence. Councillor, oh, sorry, let me read this out and then I'll come to you. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interest as soon as they become aware, should the need arise through the meeting. So declarations of interest. Councillor Stilts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will declare that I do know the applicant, although he's not a close friend, but I do know him.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shaughnessy and then Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Chair. I also know the applicant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jennings.
Yes, I wish to declare a non-registrable interest in item number 5, as I am familiar with the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Spenceley.
Non-registrable interest on item 5, as the applicant is known to me and a fellow trustee of the Maldon Festival. Thank you.
Okay, is that all? Oh, and Councillor Lay.
Similar to Councillor Jennings, non-registrable interest for item 5. The applicant is known to me.
Thank you. Okay, any other declarations? No? All right, we'll move on to agenda item 5, then, found on pages 11 to 26. Mr. Johnson, please, could you go through the report?
Thank you, Chairman. This application proposes a change of use from Class E, parenthesis E, osteopath treatment rooms, to a sui generis. That means it doesn't fall into any particular town planning and use class. Short-term holiday let accommodation. So I'll just run through the slides as is customary. So here we have the site here. We've got the High Street there, and we've got White Horse Street to the rear. The application premises is located towards this end of the premises. Again, this is just a location plan taken from the file. Again, we can just see the site here. Specific premises in this area here. Again, just a block plan. Hatching indicating area to be converted at first floor level. So we can see specifically this is where the site is. This is a 3-story element of which it occupies the middle floor. We have the existing first floor layout, as it says here. First floor, the subject of the proposed conversion. So this is all this hatched area. So in the report where it refers to the previous use of the premises, which is treatment rooms, we can see the annotation here of treatment rooms, reception, etc. And this is the floor space, the subject of the proposed conversion. We have a lounge, dining area, kitchen, cupboards, bedroom, bathroom. So we can there compare the previous use and the existing, the subject proposal. So just some photographs, again, just showing the site here. Only one single photograph, that's all that needs to be shown. So I'll just leave it there, and I'll just run through a quick summary of the report. This application proposes a change of use, as I said before, from treatment rooms to a short-term holiday let accommodation. The application site is located to the first floor of the 3-story building fronting White Horse Lane, previously in lawful use as treatment rooms associated with an osteopath clinic. In essence, this is a medical facility. An appeal against refusal of a proposal for a use of the space as a 1-bedroom flat was dismissed in February this year, and the inspector noted the current layout was different from the plans of the 1-bedroom flat. And what that essentially means is that the floor space had already been converted into this the 1-bedroom flat as was applied for at the time, and that is currently the case as things stand. And just as way of background information, but in no way related to this application here, there is just an ongoing enforcement case running concurrently because there has been a change of use, but that has no bearing on obviously the merits of this application in front of members. So just to make that clear. 5.2 of the report considers the principle of the development, and at 5.2.2 refers to policy S5, and at 5.2.3 E5, setting out the context of support for a range of uses in the town centre. Policy E3 sets out the support for community facilities and the requirements of a proposal where there would be a loss of a community facility, and the requirements of a proposal, that being to demonstrate that the existing business or service, this is whether the floor space is occupied by a running business or not. It's the lawful use of the premises. Demonstrating that the existing business stroke service is not and cannot be made viable, and effective marketing has been carried out to demonstrate that that is the case. That's the policy requirement. And that has to be to the satisfaction of the council. In the council's view, in the officer's view, there is no viable and for the use to demonstrate that there is no viable and appropriate alternative community use that can be used in that space. So have they carry out that exercise to show there's been no other use that can be used in this space, yeah? There's further elements to that assessment, which I'll just draw a reference to in due course. In this respect, the application fails to provide the necessary supporting information to demonstrate the lawful use is not and cannot be made viable to the satisfaction of the council. Furthermore, it is noted the osteopath business has relocated nearby, demonstrating the use itself, that type of use, is not unviable. The marketing carried out relates to, and this is the evidence that's been submitted to the council, to 2 unspecified periods, one in 2021 and one in 2023. And the advertisement on the applicant's website states, and this is in the officer's report, a 25 square metre area and not the 63 square metres of the application site. In addition, there is no evidence that the rent sought is reasonable. Normally in cases like this, there would be some corroboration that the rent is a reasonable rate for the size of premises and the use sought. And lastly, no evidence of any commercial aspect of the proposal has been submitted. What that effectively means is that the applicant hasn't stated what this short-term holiday let accommodation would be in the application to any significant level of detail for officers to be satisfied that there is a viable proposal on the table for us to consider. And lastly, a number of these points were noted by the inspector in dismissing the appeal in February 2023. The proposal is therefore recommended for refusal, as set out at Section 8 of the officer's report. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Farley, your 2 minutes is up, but I'll just let you finish this sentence since you couldn't see the clock. Mr. Farley, that's it. You've had your 2 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, members, I now invite you to put questions or make any comments regarding this report. Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you very much indeed to the officer for a very comprehensive and detailed report. It definitely helps when you're going through the decision-making process. There's a few comments and maybe questions that might come out of it for Mr. Johnson. On page number 15 under 5.2.4, it talks about the community facilities, and it says particularly where they are essential to the local community. I know this, I visited when it was an osteopathy. It's quite small, it's not really a hospital, it's not really a medical facility. So I find that a little bit far for me to say that that is a community asset that could be used for medical provision. The osteopaths moved across to expand their business across into the area of the courtyard. And on that same page, under 5.2.5, it talks about the council will support developments that positively add to the growth of the local tourism in a sustainable manner. This is right in the middle of the high street. It's at the back. It's a newer addition to the old King's Head Centre, and it is on the first point on that page. It says there, where there's an identified need for the provision proposed. We know we've got an identified need because we are short on hotel accommodation and short-term lets within the high street. Moving on to page 16, 5.2.11. That sounds a bit strange. It says the most recent lawful use of the premises is a medical use, which is a type of community facility. I think I've covered that. It is a type, but it doesn't limit it to what it should actually be. If it was a designated building that was really for what I would say a hospital or some minor injury class, I think I would look at view this application differently. Page 17. On the top paragraph where it talks about, and Mr. Johnson's quite right to talk about, it is the rent reasonable. If you break down 5,340 quid, that's £102 a week for a commercial build and rent in a high street location. I would have thought that is reasonable. Obviously, there's been no test, but looking on the balance of that, there's just one other thing that stuck out in my head. It's on page 21. It's under 5.7.6. And it says, as a result of the location of the site and the nature of the development proposed, the proposal will have off-site impacts with nature conservation. I've struggled with that a little bit because it's in the high street location. I may be wide of the mark with what that actually means, but that is something that stuck out to me that I'd like to have a little bit more information upon, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lagan. Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Lagan, just for clarification, I missed the paragraph reference on your last point.
Through the chair.
I was writing at the same time.
That's okay. You have to balance so many balls when you're up there, don't you? So it's on page 17 and it's the top paragraph.
Right, I haven't got the numbers, so paragraph number is?
Paragraph number is 5.2.11.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the second half of that paragraph, about second line up from the bottom, Mr. Johnson. Thank you.
Councillor Lagan, I think the very last point was about 5.7.6, was it? You were the very last point.
Sorry, through you, Chair.
Yep.
5.7.6 was about the nature and development proposed, off-site impacts on nature conservation.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
So, do you want to respond to that, or shall we take further comments?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just try and respond to them as best as I can. It may not be complete, but obviously it can always come back if I've missed something out. Nature of the use. Councillor Lagan asked about the whether if essentially, is this a community use? Is this a medical use? How does that relate to the floor space? I think, and what can the floor space be used for? And Councillor Lagan stated, if it were for specifically a medical use, then that would be considered maybe, I'm not saying more favourably, but there'd be a different consideration to that, if that's correct, yeah? The policy is quite general in a sense. When it talks about community uses, it's not specific just to an osteopath. It says an osteopath is a type of community use of a medical nature. This could be something, it could be a doctor's surgery. It could be something of any of those type of uses. They would similarly fall within that category of use, which would be supported by this policy. So that's the wider explanation to that. So it's not just limiting it to a particular type of medical use in this sense, which may be an osteopath. Yeah, it may not carry the same weighting as a doctor's surgery, but equally it falls within that same use class. So officers have only assessed what's in front of them. If this was any other use that was pertaining towards being consistent with the policy on that basis, it would be supported in the same way. Yeah. You talked about the rent, and I do appreciate that. What officers are saying that in looking at the applicant's website and looking at the advertisement, the rent sought related to a 25 square meter area. It does not relate to the totality of the floor space of this application in front of us. So there raises some question marks in terms of officers' views in terms of how robust has this assessment been. Now, while anyone can go on the website and look at the application file, look at all the details, the specific details in terms of what's been submitted in officers' view is not satisfactory. When in the report it's mentioned, as I highlighted in my summary, unspecified dates. We effectively had an A4 sheet with two printed entries on it, showing floor space and having a quick blurb of, you know, what the proposed, well, this is the area that is sought, that has been advertised. In my experience, when based with similar applications, you get a substantial report, which will detail all the information about the premises, how the marketing has gone about. It's normally carried out by independent surveyors looking at this, or even reputable high street surveyors, to corroborate and provide the necessary evidence for these sorts of application. In our view, an A4 sheet with just two printed entries is not sufficient evidence. Now, we're not necessarily saying that the evidence can't be put in front of officers, but what's been put in front of us is unsatisfactory. So that's the point there. I may well have missed another point that you raised, Councillor Lagan, so please do remind me at a later point.
No, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Johnson. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I think Councillor Jennings and then Councillor Spenceley. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Chair. I refer to point 5.7.6, where it regards nature. Walking past the area in particular this evening on my way home from work, I took a great interest in looking at the nature surrounding that area. We have a road, we have a car park, we have a back of a supermarket. I couldn't see any foreseeable signs of nature and the impact it would have on that particular area. I think the cars in the car park have a more detrimental effect on the nature of the environment rather than that particular building. Next point is 5.4.1, listed building impact. I believe, it's my knowledge, being a Maldonian, that part of the King's Head Centre used to be a barn. Pretty sure that what it is now has had a greater impact on the listed building side of things and the look of the whole facility than what it was, a barn in disrepair. There ends my points. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Do you want to come back on that, Mr. Johnson?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Really, just a quick response. The 5.7 around nature contributions, nature conservation. But then as it goes on to 5.7.6, and actually I think that's something that Councillor Lagan did mention as it's come to my mind now, it talks about Essex Coast Rams. Now, firstly, the application is not saying that there is any impact from this proposal as such on nature conservation. But what it's saying, and where this complies with policy, is that where there is a use proposed that will result in additional footfall within a zone, and this is a zone which protects these special areas within Maldon. With additional footfall, it means that, particularly of a tourist nature, they will be utilising potentially these special protected areas. This is zones that's applied across Essex. So if an application is being supported in that respect, then one would need to be paying a tariff. And that tariff is £157.36, as I recall it, being amended recently. It's pretty standard in applications like this. If, for example, members were to be supporting this application as part of the conditions or a unilateral undertaking, I would be suggesting that any permission include a RAMS tariff. That's pretty standard. It's only there as a reason for refusal on this application because one has not been submitted with this application. But this is normally, with the agreement of the application, something that can be overcome. So that's in that respect. Your other point was on, I think it was
5.4.1.
That one might have slipped me. Could you, sorry again, it was
5.4.1, listed building impact.
Oh yeah, listed building impact.
The fact that building where it currently is.
The report doesn't, well, the report actually categorically states that there is no impact on the listed building. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. I think we'll go to Councillor Paula Spenceley.
Thank you, Chair. So looking at page 16, 5.2.8, and the second part of that paragraph, where it says, however, as part of the application, no supporting information has been provided to demonstrate that there is an identified need for the provision proposed. The Council has commissioned a visitor accommodation study, the initial results of which support the provision of additional holiday accommodation within the district, but mainly for hotel and self-catering accommodation in the rural area, unlike the development of the subject of the current application. So a couple of questions come to me from looking at that. First of all, when was this visitor accommodation study commissioned? And it says initial results. I'm not aware of those as a member. I don't know if anybody else is aware exactly what the results of that are. But I sat in here on a previous planning meeting during the pre-election period, and maybe the pre-election period sent me slightly mad, I'm not sure. But I do recall that there was another application where we were looking at an Airbnb, and it seemed to be suggested there that accommodation was very much needed in the town centre, and yet here we're being told it's not needed in the town centre. So I'm a little bit confused about that, and I would have thought actually that a town centre location, surely, are we saying that there isn't? I mean, I can't think of any reason why people wouldn't want to stay in the town centre, so that seems a little bit loose to me, to be perfectly honest. The other thing is, and I do understand you alluding to a doctor's surgery, Mr. Johnson, but let's be honest, we've got got 2 satellite surgeries in Heybridge, and the problem is finding the doctors, not finding the surgeries. So, again, I knowing that premises, I find that a little bit tenuous. I think we do have to accept as time moves on. We would all like to see bustling high streets full of retail and these kinds of community provisions. In reality, the nature of our high streets have changed. And we do, to a certain extent, have to accept that. I mean, if I was walking up the high street only yesterday and noticing how many buildings we now have vacant, how many premises. So I'm, being that I do believe this would contribute towards maintaining the centre from what I've heard for the King's Head Centre, that's a concern to me. But I would like to understand exactly what was behind this visitor accommodation study and whether or not it specifically referenced that there was no need for town centre accommodation or no desire for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spenceley. Mr Johnson?
Thank you, Chairman. I can't actually give you the details of what this study is myself. That is not something I personally have looked at in a great deal of details. Unfortunately, the officer is not here who wrote this report to actually make that clear distinction for you. But I understand it's a report within the last year or two. This is not an aged document, but I don't know the details of it, so I can't actually give you that information to support your further understanding of that. In terms of the use, I think the overriding. In fact, when we look at the reason for refusal, at section 8, although that comment that you highlighted is stated within the report, the reason for refusal is that the proposal does not comply with the policy because it's not been demonstrated that the existing business is not viable and that effective marketing has been undertaken. That's the essential reason for refusal. And that is really what members are looking at here. I think that's fairly clear in itself. It's not the visitor study report. While that's background information to the information in front of you, the reason for refusal, and I think that's why I sort of laboured on it in the initial presentation, was around the fact that the information we're looking for, we would normally expect of a particular standard, had not been submitted with this. And as I said previously, had that been the case, there may have been a different outcome. I can't prejudge that, but the information wasn't there for us to be in that position to come to a different view.
Okay, thank you, Mr Johnson. Councillor Nick Spenceley, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the context we're facing is economic stagnation at best, or recession. And one of the bright spots on the horizon is an upturn in tourism, fuelled by a lot of factors, including the popularity of Maldon as a filming location. So my understanding of S3, policy S3, is that, and I may be misunderstanding it because it's new to me, there's a danger that it will preserve facilities in Aspic awaiting businesses which will not materialise. How flexible is that policy? And why are we not looking at Maldon Town Centre as a location for people who can come here, enjoy the town, spend their money, pay entrance fees, and boost our economy? Thank you.
Mr Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I'll partly be reiterating some of what I said to Councillor Mrs Spenceley. The reason for refusal on this application is based around E3. And the particular element in E3, which is about demonstrating, and this application has been determined or either recommended for refusal because it has not been demonstrated. I understand the argument, the changing nature of town centres, etc. Buildings may be going to stagnation or not, but the local plan is not, while there is an emphasis on trying to stimulate economic growth and development as soon as possible. There is also a long-term element to this as well, in terms of how buildings may be used in the future, the range of uses that they can be put to. Before we, as officers, can support a change of use out of what the primary or the existing use may be, even if it's within a similar use class to, or a similar consideration to your holiday lets and your hotels. There just has to be this exercise to go through. And that's clearly within the plan. Our decision-making premise is the primacy of the plan. That's what we go by. And it's there for a specific reason. Where that's been exhausted to our satisfaction, then we can consider alternative use. I mean, this is a sort of standard approach in planning. And it's not to say that the applicant, as I've said several times already, cannot come back with the information that's relevant. I mean, I'm sure we can find an application that can show you where you can see some very substantial information to make the point, other than, as I've sort of stressed, and I'm not being flippant or just colloquial in saying that, but an A4 sheet with where probably about a third of it comprises the two advertisement attempts as part of the evidence base that it's been appropriately marketed. That, in my view, categorically is not acceptable in our view. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Councillor Jane, I'll pick you up later, but there's a couple of other people who've been waiting to jump in. So, Councillor Shaughnessy.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to draw members' attention to 5.7, actually the whole of 5.7. I really think that a one-bedroom flat is not going to have an impact to the extent stated here in 5.7 on the natural environment. I mean, if I thought it was going to, I would be the first person to say so, as other members will know. But I really think this is an overkill here. A one-bedroom flat is not going to have that effect.
Thank you, Councillor Shaughnessy. Do you want to come back, or shall we?
Yeah, I just need to make that point. The contribution towards RAMS, it's a tariff. And I have to strongly state that this is an Essex-wide process. This is not just a Maldon process. Maldon have bought into that process because by government legislation, our protected areas of Blackwater, etc., they need to be protected. The means of protecting that is through acquiring funds where there's a potential for additional footfall within the district. I mean, there's been housing schemes which have been refused on maybe just that point, because there is not the contribution towards the tariff, towards those fundings and the monitoring that goes with it. So I would just raise my concern if the need for the RAMS tariff on any application of which it needs to be applied is dismissed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Councillor Stilts, and then I'll come back to Councillor Jennings, and then I'll pick up Councillor Burwood. Councillor Stilts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, the study was actually done this year, the tourism study. It hasn't actually been accepted yet. So that is one thing. And it does state that there is a general shortage in accommodation for tourism. If I'm right, tourism is an industry. And if you look at what our town centre is, our town centre downstairs is all shops. Upstairs it's accommodation, tourist accommodation and housing. If you look at 5.2.5, it says, where possible, there is good connections with other tourist destinations, the green infrastructure network and local services, preferably by walking, cycling or other sustainable modes of transport. What better place can you get than a town centre? They can walk to the restaurants, they can walk to the moot hall, they can walk to tourist attractions, they can get on buses and go to other places. I propose, Mr. Chairman, that we accept this we accept this proposal or this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stilts. There's a couple of other comments. So before I do anything with that proposal, can I just take back to Councillor Jennings and then Councillor Burwood?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just a comment for Mr Johnson. Correct me if I'm wrong, that policy E5 in our own LDP states that the council will support developments which contribute positively to the growth of local tourism in a sustainable manner and realise opportunities that arise from the district's landscaped, heritage and built environment. The King's Head has a huge amount of heritage in the town, and many Maldonians will remember the King's Head way back when. Including some of my own members of my family. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure that our own LDP supports this application.
I'll just take these comments because I think you'll just be repeating. You're repeating yourself, Councillor Burwood, and then I'll take Councillor Lagan.
Having looked at the comments on here, it seems to me that these 15 pages say that this is being recommended for refusal because one piece of paperwork hasn't been completed. And yes, there's lots of stuff in there about conservation and all those other sorts of things. What concerns me is that if we pass this with this paperwork not being completed satisfactorily, are we setting a precedent? And that's the only point I want to make on that is we may well set a precedent for any future applications from other applicants in future to get around potentially filling in information that is vital for us to make an informed decision. Thank you.
Mr Johnson, do you want to come back on that particular point?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I do appreciate Councillor for making the very point I think I've been stressing here. And again, as you said, I've been repeating myself, to draw back to the reason for refusal. The reason for refusal is not against the use per se. The reason for refusal is against the process. The process is embedded within the policy. This is the concerning element. And I think the council has eloquently stated that that there could well be a precedent for other applicants following the same process and drawing on the example of committees where processes within the UDP, within our LDP has been effectively sidestepped. The reason for refusal is not against the use. It just says that the proposal cannot be supported because it's failed to comply with or it hasn't demonstrated. That's the reason for refusal. And members should not lose sight of that. As I've said before, an example was drawn with another similar case earlier on this year where we have supported an application for a holiday let use. So we're not averse to that. In fact, I was at that very committee, and I'm sure as a council member, making very strong arguments for that application. But this is a different context here. It's almost as though, and again, don't want to be, speaking too colloquially, but it's almost like it was, I don't want to say half-baked, yeah, but it did leave a lot to be desired. From my professional point of view, having dealt with similar changes of uses, we always get change of use application that's contrary to policies, but you have to jump through the hoops to get it. Once that's been done, the integrity of the local plan is maintained, and if they come back with the same proposal with the relevant evidence, it can be submitted, considered differently. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr Johnson. Councillor Lagan.
If I may, Chair, could I just give way to Councillor Lay, who hasn't spoken yet, and then speak after? Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Lay.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as this is in the centre of Maldon, it's very important to me and certainly to the residents about what happens with the use of the properties within the central area of the town, and obviously to see the growth in tourism and to change the use. Here it's mentioned there's quite a lot of information coming up at us from different directions. I'm very concerned that the survey hasn't been shared and shows that there is a need for rural accommodation, yet the town does not need it. It does need it. It's a very important part of the district. It's a hub. People come here to do that, to come to the town and value what's here. It's a new business, from my understanding, it's a new business as well. So some of the statements and numbers for a new business will be not proven track record or income or things that can be actually put onto paper, but will be things that will be projected for that type of income. So they may change in what they're doing. So I fully support new businesses to the town, definitely. Footfall was mentioned as well. Sorry, there's just a couple of things. There would be football to an osteopath as there would be perhaps more than to a tourist destination as a rental with different sets of people. So I think there are many criteria for us to weigh here, but I don't see how this is proven through. I appreciate the report and the detail, but there are some serious questions about the reasons for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lay. Do you want to come back, Councillor Lagan?
Yeah, just basically, I've been listening to the debate, which I think is very strong debate, and also the views of Mr. Johnson, who is a professional planner at the end of the day. I know there is a proposal on the table by Councillor Stilts, but I'd actually put a proposal out that we defer this, especially to look for more information to meet so we maintain the integrity of the local plan. And also there's parts in it that I think if we were minded on another report, which we would have to look at the merits of that. In 5.6.4 there's even a statement there that a condition could be imposed if plan permission were to be granted requiring a bicycle store. So we could do a bicycle store, which is I think was something we need. The RAMS contributions, we can get all of the ducks lined up and therefore make a fully informed decision in compliance with the plan. So that's a proposal. Thank you.
Oops, that's a counter proposal. Well, just before we go, let's. So we've got two proposals sitting on the. Well, neither have been seconded. I've got two more. Well, let's take two more comments, and then we'll sort out these proposals. So, Councillor Spenceley, Paula Spenceley, and then back to you, Councillor Stilts.
I was going to propose deferral, so I'll second Councillor Lagan's proposal.
Okay, so that's the first proposal that's been proposed and seconded, but we do have to deal with the first proposal first. It hasn't been seconded, but it has been proposed. Do you wish to withdraw that proposal, or do we want to find a second for your first?
I would actually change my proposal slightly to say that my proposal to accept this stands, but that the RAMS is paid and that more information is brought forward. I think that deferring it is not going to do anything. I think we should look at what we've got on the table, and my proposal would be to accept this, but that the RAMS is paid.
Subject to conditions,
Yeah.
and that particular condition being that the RAM is paid.
Yeah.
But no other condition.
Well, if we have any other conditions, we have to vote on those conditions separately.
Right. Okay. So I think that is the first proposal. Do we have a seconder for that particular proposal? Then we'll decide on. So, Councillor Jennings is seconding that particular proposal. So our first proposal is that we accept this, given the condition that the RAMS payment is made, and that has been seconded by Councillor Jennings. So on that proposal, can we vote, please, councillors? Those in favour of that proposal? That's 3, 4, and against. 5 against. Okay, so that has not passed. So we go on to the second proposal from Councillor Lagan, which is that this is deferred to a point where we've got some more information, and as Councillor Lagan put it, the ducks are lined up. And that, I believe, was seconded by Councillor Spenceley.
Can I ask a quick question of Mr. Johnson? Is this a time-critical application? So by deferring it, would we incur expenses?
Thank you, Chairman. No, we wouldn't incur expenses.
Okay, so we have a proposal then that we defer from Councillor Lagan and seconded by Councillor Paula Spenceley. So can I have a vote in favour of that proposal, please? 6 and against. 3 against. Any abstentions? No.
Thank you, Chairman. Just some further clarity on the deferral. So that is to seek some clarity on some elements in the report, especially around the visitor study, etc. But also some clarity around the marketing. I'm not quite sure about that element.
Yeah, through the chair, I think what you said, Mr. Johnson, which is very apt. I think we looked at some more clarity about the marketing of the property, getting conditions imposed about bicycle stores, making sure we got the RAMS payment made, and any other applicable requirements through a change of use application like this are met. If that's...
thank you, Chairman. This is largely also for the purposes of the applicant and their agent to understand what we'd be seeking for in this deferral period.
Councillor Paula Spenceley, was there...
Just going to say exactly that, particularly around the marketing information that officers in their professional opinion would see that an opportunity for the applicants to provide that to show that it would in fact be compliant with the LDP because the marketing evidence was there. I think because what was being said by the applicant, by the agent, indicated that they have more evidence, so it would be really to defer for that reason as well as the others given by Councillor Lagan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spenceley. I think that concludes that. Is there anything further, Mr. Johnson, in terms of clarification in relation to deferral which would help the applicant, or do you feel that it is sufficiently clear for them to go away and do what's needed?
I think it's sufficiently clear, Chairman. Thank you.
We move on to item 6, items of business that the Chairman decides as urgent. There are none, and therefore I close the meeting at 8:22. Thank you very much.